You need me.
Leave your fiancé now and run away with me to Italy. He said this at my wedding, and worse, when there were only 20 minutes left before I walked down the aisle. I was in a white dress with a veil and 300 guests waiting for me. Meanwhile, the most dangerous man I'd ever met was offering me freedom. I should have said no, should have screamed, called security. But when his dark eyes met mine, when he extended his hand as if I already belonged to him, I did the one thing I shouldn't have. I took it.
Welcome to my library. I'm Lena, and our story is just beginning.
Chapter 1. The Perfect, Imperfect Bride.
Run away with me.
Some hours earlier, I had no idea how my life was about to turn upside down. 8 in the morning on a Saturday that was supposed to be the best day of my life, and all I can feel is the urge to throw up when I look at the dress hanging on the bridal suite closet door. It's perfect. The kind of dress every girl dreams of wearing someday, like something out of a fairy tale princess story. But it wasn't a dress for me, because I don't feel like a princess about to live her happily ever after. To be completely honest, I feel like a prisoner being dressed in the most expensive costume of my own condemnation. The door opens without warning, and Sophie walks in carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee, and she stops halfway when she sees my expression. Knowing someone since you were 7 years old has these unexpected advantages. She knows me too well. "Did you sleep?" she asks, but already knows the full answer by the way she sets the cups on the coffee table with excessive care, as if the sound of porcelain against wood might shatter me into 1,000 pieces. "No," I answer, and my voice comes out rougher than it should for someone who's supposedly radiant with happiness on her own wedding day, on the day that marks the beginning of my new life beside the man who's supposed to complete me. Sophie sits on the edge of the bed covered with white rose petals that the hotel staff scattered last night with meticulous care, all part of the complete pampered bride experience. She looks at me with that expression that means she's about to say something I don't want to hear but probably need to listen to. "Nervous?" she ventures carefully, though we both know that's not exactly what's keeping me awake. I let out a laugh, and the sound that comes from my throat is bitter enough to stain the perfumed air of the room. "I'd be nervous if I actually wanted to marry him," I blurt out without thinking, and the words hang between us like a confession that should have been made long ago. "Then don't marry him," Sophie says with that brutal simplicity that only best friends can have without sounding offensive, as if canceling a wedding with 300 carefully selected guests, a complete chamber orchestra, and social press coverage were as easy as canceling a simple Tuesday lunch. "It's not that simple, Soph," I murmur, as I walk to the panoramic window overlooking the immense garden where the ceremony will take place in exactly 8 hours. I can see the decorating crew still working nonstop. There are the families who've been planning this for years, the business contracts our parents signed with lawyers present, the expectations of everyone who matters in my life except myself. "And love?" Sophie asks quietly, and I can almost feel the immense weight of the word falling on the Italian marble floor, like a baccarat crystal glass shattering into 1,000 impossible-to-gather pieces. Is there love somewhere in all of this, Celine? I don't answer, because we both already know the truth for a long time now, and the heavy silence that settles between us says infinitely more than any carefully chosen words could say. Then a memory comes without warning and without permission, pulling me back to 2 years ago with the force of a giant wave. A too formal dinner at a too expensive restaurant in downtown Manhattan, the Harper and Lancaster families sitting around a huge mahogany table that seemed more suitable for a board meeting than a gathering of people who supposedly truly cared about each other. I was only 21 at the time, and naive enough to blindly believe that my parents wanted above all my genuine happiness. That's when my father leaned over the table with that experienced negotiator's smile and said that Pierce Lancaster was an excellent match in every way. How could he not be? He was CEO of Lancaster Corp at 33 years old, impressively financially stable, and it would be extremely good for our company's promising future to have this strategic alliance sealed through marriage. Pierce had looked at me that memorable night, not exactly in the eyes the way a man in love would, but in a calculated way that made me feel like I was being carefully evaluated, meticulously catalogued, coldly priced like a piece of art at an exclusive auction. Then he had told my father, without even addressing me directly, that I was beautiful and would look very good beside him at important events. Not that he genuinely liked me as a person, not that he wanted to get to know me better and discover who I was beneath the physical appearance, not that he'd felt any minimal spark of real, deep connection, just that I would look good beside him in the right places, like an expensive accessory to be displayed. And I, young and too conditioned to always please family expectations, had said yes without hesitating when he proposed 3 months later, because it was exactly what was expected of me, what would make absolutely everyone happy except myself. The sudden noise of the door opening again pulls me violently back to the suffocating present. My mother enters the room like a perfumed hurricane with bright eyes. "Darling, today is finally your long-awaited day." She practically sings with genuine joy, coming to hug me with exaggerated care not to wrinkle even an inch of the pure silk robe I'm wearing. "Yeah," I respond automatically, forcing a smile that hurts the muscles of my face from how fake it is. "Pierce is truly a very lucky man. You're absolutely radiant even without the professional makeup yet," she continues without pausing to breathe. I feel dead inside. Sophie shoots me an expressive look that says absolutely everything she can't speak out loud with my mother present and radiant in the room. I take a deep breath, trying desperately to find enough air to contain all the crushing pressure that's suffocating me. At 10 o'clock sharp, my phone rings loudly, breaking the relative silence, and Pierce's name appears on the illuminated screen with that elegant, modern font he himself chose for his contact on my phone. Even this minimal detail he needed to control, and I answer already, knowing with absolute certainty that it won't be a romantic conversation from a love-struck groom counting the hours until he sees me walking toward him. "Celine, what's the status?" he says without even a basic good morning, without asking how I'm feeling, whether I managed to sleep or not, if I'm happy or nervous, or experiencing any of the normal emotions a bride should be experiencing. "Status of what exactly, Pierce?" I ask, even though I already know the answer. "Of the preparation, obviously, of the timeline we put together," he lists with forced patience, as if explaining something obvious to a slow child. "Professional hair at 11, complete makeup at 1, then the exclusive photographer at 2, so we go to the ceremony at 4 o'clock sharp. Absolutely everything needs to follow the timeline exactly as we planned down to the smallest details." "I know the timeline perfectly, Pierce. I helped you put together every part of it," I respond, and there's a sharp edge in my voice that he deliberately chooses to ignore completely. "Great. And Celine," he makes a calculated pause that's too studied to be natural or spontaneous. "No improvisation today. Everything needs to be perfect with no margin for error. My mother made a point of inviting several important people from the specialized press." My stomach plummets as if in free fall. "Press? You definitely didn't mention that detail before." Of course I invited media representatives. Young and successful CEO, marrying the beautiful Harper heiress is relevant news, darling. "It'll be extremely good for both families' businesses," he says casually. I deeply hate the casual way he uses the word darling, as if it were just another empty word without any meaning instead of something that should be said with true affection. "Wear the dress I personally chose. The pure white Vera Wang, not the other one you said you liked better. That one objectively looks better in professional photographs. Perfectly understood. Not even this, not even the final choice of my own wedding dress was genuinely truly mine." I squeeze the phone hard enough that my knuckles turn completely white. "Understood," I answer through clenched teeth. When I hang up the short call, Sophie is staring at me with that familiar expression of someone who wants to say "I told you so" repeatedly, but she wisely just murmurs in a low voice. He's extremely controlling, cold as ice, impossible to please no matter what I do because he doesn't really want a real wife. He wants a perfect employee who also warms his bed when convenient. I complete the sentence bitterly. Then I look at the large clock on the wall. "And I'm going to marry this man in exactly 6 hours from now." The following hours pass in a confused blur of intense activity. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I finally get a precious moment of relative peace when the entire photography crew decides to take a 15-minute technical break to check equipment. I quickly escape to the hotel's immense garden before anyone can stop or question me, still dressed only in the silk robe before the official photos. I sit alone on a cold stone bench beneath an old pergola completely covered with fragrant jasmine. I remove the delicate veil that was already starting to suffocate me, even without being properly attached to the elaborate hair, place it carefully beside me, and close my eyes for a moment just trying to breathe deeply. "Una sposa triste, e cattivo presagio," a male voice says behind me without warning, deep and enveloping, each syllable loaded with a striking Italian accent that makes each word sound like dark, expensive velvet smoothly passing over my goosebumped skin. I turn so quickly toward the sound that I almost fall off the stone bench. The man casually standing a few meters away shouldn't exist outside of European films or impossible feverish dreams. All-black Italian suit obviously custom-cut to perfection on a body that fills the fabric in a way that should definitely be illegal. Dark hair slicked back in the most elegant way I've ever seen. And eyes that are so dark and deep they seem almost completely black even under the strong afternoon sunlight, fixed directly on me with a penetrating intensity that makes my heart stumble awkwardly inside my tight chest. He's handsome in a brutal, dangerous way, the specific type of man you know instinctively you should avoid at all costs, but who pulls you irresistibly like an impossible-to-resist gravitational force. "Excuse me?" I manage to say with difficulty, though my voice comes out significantly weaker and shakier than I'd like it to sound. He smoothly switches to perfect, fluent English, only lightly tinged by the seductive accent that becomes even more evident and striking on certain specific vowels. "A sad bride is a bad omen," he translates calmly. And then, completely without asking permission, or waiting for any kind of invitation from me, he sits directly beside me on the narrow bench. Close enough that I can feel the heat from his body radiating, the unmistakable smell of something expensive and woody, mixed with quality Italian cigarettes, and pure, concentrated danger. "How long until the wedding exactly?" he asks naturally. 90 minutes, I respond automatically without thinking, and then my brain catches up with my mouth. "And you are?" "Someone who shouldn't be here invading your moment," he says calmly, and there's a small but visible smile playing at the corners of his well-shaped mouth, almost imperceptible, but definitely present if you pay attention. But I honestly couldn't stay away. His dark eyes travel over my entire face in an intense way that makes my skin heat up several degrees, and I feel genuinely seen in a deep way that Pierce has never seen me in 2 complete years of official engagement. "Do I know you from somewhere?" I ask, confused, and at the same time strangely without any desire whatsoever to get up and run away from there, which would definitely be the sensible and appropriate reaction of any normal person in this bizarre situation. "Not directly," he admits, and then leans only slightly in my direction, and I can see with absolute clarity small golden flecks in his dark eyes that catch the sunlight. "But I know you anyway. Exactly 6 months ago, at the art gallery on Madison Avenue, sophisticated charity opening for underprivileged children, you were wearing an emerald green dress that matched your eyes perfectly, and were laughing with your red-haired friend about something the pretentious curator had said about incomprehensible contemporary art." He makes a significant pause, and there's something almost reverent in the careful way he speaks about that moment. "And I decided at that exact moment, watching you from afar, that you would inevitably be mine." My heart is beating so absurdly hard that I'm absolutely certain he can hear each irregular beat. I should be scared, should be screaming loudly for hotel security, but all I can truly feel is a dangerous curiosity mixed with something that looks very much like inexplicable recognition. As if some unconscious part of me had been patiently waiting for this specific moment without knowing it consciously. "This is insanity," I managed to say finally. "I agree with you," he responds, and there's a brutal honesty in those 2 simple words, but it's the purest truth. He leans even closer, close enough that I can see perfectly the shadow of stubble on his strong jaw, close enough that my breathing gets hopelessly stuck somewhere undefined between my contracted lungs and my closed throat. "You don't really want to marry him?" Not a question waiting for an answer, but a confident statement. The fact that this dangerous stranger sees something so obvious that my own family deliberately chose to ignore makes me feel simultaneously exposed and genuinely understood for the first time in years. "You don't know absolutely anything about—" I start to protest weakly, but he cuts me off. "I know everything I need to know," he says, and there's an absolute, unshakable certainty in his deep voice. "Pierce Lancaster, young CEO of Lancaster Corp., extremely controlling, cold as marble, sees you only as a pretty trophy to proudly display at important corporate dinners and exclusive gala parties." His eyes search mine with an intensity that's almost physical and palpable, and you feel completely trapped in a beautiful golden cage that you yourself helped build bar by bar. Treacherous tears threaten to appear and completely ruin the professional makeup, and I blink rapidly several times to keep them exactly where they are. "Who the hell are you?" I ask directly, and my voice comes out rougher than I intended. "Matteo Salvatore," he says, and the name falls heavy between us, loaded with meaning I don't yet fully understand. But that makes something inexplicable in my chest tighten painfully. "And I came here today to make you a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" I ask, even knowing the answer might change everything. Matteo takes my hand without warning, and the touch is like being struck by lightning. Pure electricity running from his palm to mine, making every nerve ending in my body wake up in a way I didn't know was possible. "Run away with me," he says simply, and the words hang suspended in the air between us. "What?" I manage to whisper, heart racing. "Now, today, leave your insignificant fiancé at the altar and come with me to Italy." Matteo continues with that deep voice that makes my skin tingle. "Have freedom, have a real life. For the first time, make a decision for yourself alone." I pull my hand back even though my entire body is protesting the loss of contact, and I stand up so fast the bench creaks. "You're completely insane," I say, and I know it should sound like an accusation, but it sounds more like an amazed observation. Mateo stands with me, getting too close, so close that I'd have to lean back to maintain any safe distance. But I don't move, completely caught in his gravitational field. "Maybe," he admits without hesitation, "but you want to. I saw it in your eyes. You want to run away from here, run away from him." His dark eyes search mine with intensity. "I'm just offering you the way out." "I don't know you," I protest, though my voice has lost all conviction. "But you feel it," he says quietly, and then his hand moves, fingers landing lightly on the robe fabric exactly where my heart is trying to escape my ribs. "Here, chemistry, attraction, destiny, call it whatever you want, but you feel it." I step back, because staying close for one more second will make me do something very stupid. "I need to go. The wedding. I can't." The words stumble over each other. Mateo pulls a card from his suit pocket and extends it to me. "My number. If you change your mind," he says with a small, dangerous smile. "I'll be waiting." I take the card, fingers brushing his again, and sending more electric sparks up my arm. Then he turns and walks away with confident steps, disappearing between the bushes. "Celine, the photographer is looking for you desperately." Sophie's familiar voice cuts through the perfumed air, and I quickly stash the card in the silk robe's hidden pocket, turning to find my best friend approaching hurriedly with that worried expression she's been consistently wearing all day. "Who was that man?" she asks with obvious curiosity. "Nobody," I lie, and the word burns uncomfortably on my tongue. But he definitely was somebody, and we both know that perfectly well, even though Sophie doesn't have all the information yet. At 3:45 in the afternoon, I'm finally in the complete dress, each of the countless tiny buttons fastened with precision, every detail double-checked to absolute perfection. The Belgian lace veil finally pinned to the elaborate hair with a diamond comb that belonged to Pierce's grandmother. When I look at my reflection in the luxurious suite's full-length mirror, I see exactly what Pierce ordered with detailed specifications, what my family expects with anticipation, what 300 carefully selected guests will see when I walk down the aisle of rose petals toward my programmed future. And all I can truly feel is that I'm looking directly at my own beautiful prison. "Darling, 15 minutes!" my mother calls excitedly from outside the door, voice singing with pure enthusiasm, and I respond, "Yes, Mom," with a voice I don't even recognize as my own. When the door closes, leaving me alone again, my hand goes to the dress's hidden pocket, where I stashed my phone and Mateo's card. Fingers trembling so much, I almost dropped the phone twice before managing to dial the printed number. He answers on the first ring. "Celine," he says my name like it's an ancient prayer, as if he's been waiting for exactly this call since he left the garden earlier. "How do you know it's me?" I ask, and my voice is breaking dangerously at the edges. "I knew you'd call," he responds with that irritating yet strangely reassuring confidence. "Changed your mind? I can't just do this. There's my entire family. There's Pierce, and all the expectations, the business contracts. The excuses pour from my mouth like water from an open faucet, as if I'm trying to convince myself more than him. "And you?" he interrupts gently, voice low but cutting. "What do you really want, Celine?" And that's the question no one wanted to ask me. The tears finally escape, because the answer is so crystal clear, and so impossible at the same time. I want to run away from here. I want to leave. I want to breathe without feeling like I'm constantly suffocating. But I can't just— "Yes, you can. You just need to choose," Mateo says firmly, and there's real urgency now in his voice. "Go to the back door of the hotel, in the East Garden. There'll be a black car waiting. I'll be there. You just need to come." "And if I don't?" I ask, even though I already know I will, that I made the decision the exact second I dialed his number. "Then you get married, live the life you don't want to live, and I spend the rest of my life regretting not stealing you sooner," he responds. And there's a comforting honesty in those words that makes me believe him in a way I never believed Pierce during our entire relationship. The call drops, and I stand there completely alone, dressed as the perfect bride, made up and styled to artificial perfection, with an impossible choice in my trembling hands. At 3:58 in the afternoon, 2 minutes before the solemn music begins and my life ends, or begins depending entirely on which choice I make now, my father knocks on the door and enters, offering his arm with that proud paternal smile that carries so many hopes deposited entirely on me. "Ready, sweetheart?" I take a deep breath, the tight bodice of the dress compressing my ribs in a way that feels too much like a metaphor to be mere coincidence. "Dad, I need to go to the bathroom really quick. It's just normal bride nerves, just a minute, I promise." He frowns with concern. "Now? But Celine, the ceremony is about to—" "Just 1 minute, please," I interrupt urgently, and before he can protest more or question, I'm practically running down the luxurious hallway toward the suite's private bathroom. The heavy dress makes every step difficult, but pure adrenaline gives me strength I didn't know I had. I lock the door hard, lean against it for a second, trying to control my gasping breath, and look at my reflection in the mirror for the last time as the Celine Harper who always obediently did what was expected, the one who always pleased everyone, who always chose comfortable safety instead of true desire and family duty instead of personal freedom. I grab my small purse that contains my passport and wallet, look at the bathroom window that opens directly onto the side garden, ground floor thank God, and make the final decision that will change absolutely everything in my life. I open the window carefully. The voluminous dress barely fits through the opening, but I manage to squeeze through with determination, jump the few inches to the soft lawn, and run. I run with the $15,000 dress lifted to my knees, the Louboutin heels sinking into the perfectly manicured grass. I run as if my entire life depends on it, and maybe it really does. I run toward the east garden where Matteo said he'd be waiting. When I turn the corner of perfectly trimmed bushes, my heart almost stops when I see the gleaming black car, and him leaning against it with casual elegance. His dark eyes literally light up when they see me, and there's a smile that's pure triumph mixed with genuine relief. "You came," he says, and it's not a question. It's an amazed observation. "I'm completely insane," I respond breathlessly, heart beating so hard and fast I can barely hear my own trembling voice. Matteo opens the car door with elegant movements, even in the obvious urgency of the moment. "No, you're free," he corrects gently, and extends his firm hand to me. "Get in." I look back one last time, see the immense hotel where my family is waiting, where Pierce is adjusting his tie and checking his expensive watch, where 300 guests are being directed to their decorated seats, where my entire planned and safe and absolutely suffocating life is patiently waiting for me. I look forward again, see Matteo, dangerous and intense, and offering exactly what I need most desperately, even without knowing how to define what it is. "If I get in this car now, there's no possible turning back," I say, and I need him to perfectly understand the gravity of what I'm doing. "There isn't," he agrees without hesitation, hand still extended patiently. "But there's also no more prison." I take his hand, fingers intertwining with mine in a fit that feels too right to be coincidence. "Get me out of here," I ask, and my voice finally has true certainty. His smile is absolutely devastating. "Con piacere, tesoro," he said with his irresistible Italian. I get in the car, he gets in immediately after, the door closes with a final sound, and the driver accelerates before I even finish sitting properly on the soft leather seat. Inside the hotel, my father must be insistently banging on the bathroom door now, shouting my name with growing concern. At some point in the next few minutes, they'll break down the locked door and find the bathroom completely empty, the window wide open, the veil fallen on the marble floor, the bride disappeared without a trace, and Pierce Lancaster will receive the devastating news, and his perfectly controlled face will freeze first in shock and then in something between cold fury and public humiliation. He'll order them to search for me, to find me, to bring me back by force if necessary. But I'm already too far away to be reached, already safe in the car speeding away with Matteo, with my hand still intertwined with his, and for the first time in years, I can feel alive. Chapter 2. Escape to Italy.
I'll wait.
The car speeds through New York streets while I'm still trying to process what I just did. My wedding dress is wrinkled on the leather seat, the veil crooked in my hair, and my hand is still intertwined with Matteo's, as if it's the only thing keeping me from panicking. "Where are we going?" I manage to ask after a few minutes of tense silence, my voice coming out weaker than I'd like. "To a private airport. My jet is waiting. And then we're going to Italy." Matteo responds with that irritating calmness, as if we were just going out to dinner and not running away from my own wedding. "You planned all of this?" I ask, turning to look at him properly for the first time since we got in the car. The sunlight coming through the tinted windows illuminates his profile, and I wonder for the 1,000th time if I've gone insane since I saw you 6 months ago. He admits without hesitation, turning his face to look at me. His dark eyes meet mine. "I was just waiting for you to choose. And if I hadn't called," I ask, "because I need to know." Matteo smiles, and it's a small but genuine smile. "I would have stormed the church," he says, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "But you called, because you wanted to run away as much as I wanted to steal you." I should deny it, but he's right. I wanted to run away, wanted it so badly that I accepted the offer of a dangerous stranger, instead of walking down the aisle to Pierce. The silence falls between us again, but it's not uncomfortable. It's charged with something I can't name, a tension that makes my skin tingle every time Matteo moves his thumb in slow circles on my hand. I don't know this man, don't know anything about him besides his name, but I feel an attraction so intense it's almost physical. "Are you afraid of me?" Matteo asks suddenly, and there's something vulnerable in the question. I should be, I respond honestly, but I'm not. At least not the way I should be. Matteo raises his free hand and touches my face with a gentleness that contradicts everything about his dangerous appearance. You're mine now, he says quietly, and it's not a threat. It's a promise. Something inside me rebels against the words even as my entire body reacts to his touch. I'm nobody's, I respond firmly. Yet, he says with that small, confident smile returning to his lips, and then he releases my hand and pulls away, giving me space I didn't ask for but maybe need. The rest of the drive to the airport passes too quickly. When we arrive, Matteo gets out first and offers his hand to help me out, and I accept because the voluminous dress makes it impossible to do it alone. The private jet waiting on the runway is luxurious in a way that leaves me speechless. It's not just a plane, it's a work of art in metal and glass, gleaming under the afternoon sun with the name Salvatore discreetly painted on the fuselage. We climb the stairs, and the interior is even more impressive. Cream leather seats that look like armchairs, polished wood lining the walls, and an area that looks more like a living room than part of a plane. A man is in the pilot's cabin, and he stands up when he sees us enter. "Boss," he says with a strong Italian accent, and then looks at me with curiosity. And this must be the runaway bride. Enzo. Celine, Enzo, my right hand and pilot. Matteo makes quick introductions, and Enzo extends his hand with a genuine smile. "Pleasure to meet the woman who's driven the boss crazy for the last 6 months, he says with humor in his dark eyes. Enzo, Matteo warns with a low voice, but there's no real irritation there. "Getting ready for takeoff," Enzo says with a laugh, returning to the cabin. Matteo guides me to one of the seats, and then goes to a bar built into the wall, returning with 2 crystal glasses and a bottle of champagne. He opens it with expert movements and pours the glasses, extending one to me. "To your freedom," he says, raising his glass in a toast. I take the glass and our hands touch again, that familiar electricity running between us. "To insanity," I respond, and drink. The champagne is cold and perfect, going down my throat, and for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe without the weight of expectations crushing me. The plane starts to move, and I look out the window seeing the airport fall behind. There's no turning back now, and strangely I don't feel the panic I should feel. I only feel a lightness I haven't experienced in a long time. "Tell me about yourself," I ask after we take off. Matteo sits beside me, close enough that I can feel his heat. "What do you want to know?" he asks, turning to face me. "Everything. You apparently know everything about me, but I don't know anything about you," I respond. Matteo takes a sip of champagne, considering. Matteo Salvatore, 37 years old, born in Naples but raised between Italy and the United States. I inherited the family business when I was 23, and since then, I've been working to transform the company into something legitimate. "Why the gallery 6 months ago?" I ask. His face softens. "Charity donation. My company sponsored the event. I was bored, planning to leave early, and then I saw you." He pauses. "You were in front of a Monet painting, laughing at something your friend said, and in that moment I decided I needed to meet you." "That's obsessive," I say, but my voice comes out without judgment. "It's honest," Matteo corrects, and there's a brutal sincerity in the words. "I researched you, found out who you were, that you were engaged. I saw you at other events after that, always from afar, always watching, always waiting." It's disturbing how much he understands, how much he saw things I barely admitted to myself. "Now you," Matteo says, "tell me about Pierce, about how you got to the point of running away." I sigh deeply. "I met Pierce 2 years ago at a dinner our families organized. My father made it clear it would be good for business, that Pierce was stable and successful, everything a daughter should want. But you didn't want him," Matteo completes. "I was 21 and thought love would come with time," I continue. "Pierce was polite, proper, said the right things in front of my parents. I thought it would be enough." "When did you realize it wasn't?" he asked gently. 6 months after the engagement, when he started controlling every aspect of my life. What to wear, how to style my hair, who to talk to, I respond, and the bitterness in my voice is evident. I realized that to him, I wasn't a person. I was a project to be perfected. "Suffocation," Matteo says with understanding. "Exactly. I was drowning in expectations and duties, and each day that passed I felt less of myself remaining," I admit. Matteo extends his hand and takes mine, intertwining our fingers. "Never again," he says firmly. "You choose now. Everything. Always. What to wear, what to do, where to go. Your life is yours again." And for the first time in 2 years, I believe those words. We continue talking for the next few hours. Matteo tells me about Italy, about the villa in Tuscany where we're going to stay, about the vineyards surrounding the property. I tell him about my forgotten dreams of being an artist, of painting. "You'll paint again," Matteo says. "I'll arrange a studio at the villa, everything you'll need. You haven't even seen my work. It could be horrible," I say with a light laugh. "I doubt it. But even if it is, you'll still have the studio, he responds, and something in my chest warms. Eventually, exhaustion catches up with me. Matteo points to a door in the back. There's a bedroom there, you can rest. We still have a few hours. I get up from the seat, and the dress is uncomfortable. Matteo notices and moves to stand behind me. May I? He asks, fingers hovering over the buttons on the back. My heart races, but I nod. His fingers work on the buttons with surprising patience, and each light touch sends shivers running down my spine. When the last button comes loose, the bodice loosens, and I can breathe deeply. Thank you, I whisper, turning to look at him. We're too close, and for a moment I think he's going to kiss me, but he steps away, giving space. I go to the bedroom, change the dress for a soft robe, and let myself fall on the bed. I close my eyes, hoping sleep will come, but my mind won't stop spinning with everything that happened. Eventually, exhaustion wins. I wake up with the sensation of the plane descending, and when I look out the window, I see the sky changing color, shades of orange and pink painting the clouds. I leave the bedroom, finding Matteo looking out the window. Are we arriving? I ask. 15 minutes, he confirms. Gestures to the window. Look, I sit beside him, and what I see takes my breath away. The landscape below is of unreal beauty. Green hills covered with vineyards, small stone villages with terracotta roofs, and in the distance, the Tuscan mountains against the colored sky. It's beautiful, I whisper, and tears run down my face. Matteo wipes a tear with his thumb. Welcome to Italy, he says softly. The plane lands on a private runway surrounded by green hills, and when we exit the jet, the warm Tuscan air envelops me. There's a car waiting, and Matteo guides me to it with his hand on my back. The drive to the villa takes 20 minutes on narrow roads lined with cypress trees and vineyards. The sun is setting, tinting everything golden, and I can't stop looking out the window. When we turn through a wrought iron gate and I see the villa, my breath catches. It's old and beautiful, beige stone weathered by time but preserved. Large windows with dark green shutters, surrounded by manicured gardens. The car stops in front of the main entrance, and Matteo gets out first, offering his hand. My bare feet touch the still warm stone, and I just stand there looking at the imposing structure. It's beautiful, I whisper, still not believing this is real. It's yours for as long as you want, Matteo says, and then looks at me with eyes full of promises. Welcome to your new home, Celine. And standing there in front of that old villa in Tuscany, with the most dangerous and fascinating man I've ever met by my side, I finally understand what true freedom is. Chapter 3, Italy and Truths.
Paint again, Celine.
The next morning arrives with golden light coming through the open shutters of the immense room where I slept for the first time on Italian soil. I get up from the bed that's too soft to be real and go to the window, opening the shutters completely, and what I see leaves me breathless. Villa Salvatore extends majestically amid landscapes that look like Renaissance paintings coming to life. Vineyards organized in perfect rows cover the hills as far as my eyes can reach, the green leaves swaying gently with the morning breeze. The sky is such an intense, clean blue that it seems unreal, without a single cloud to stain the perfection. And in the distance I can see the soft outlines of the Tuscan mountains drawn against the horizon. This is unreal, I whisper to myself, still trying to believe this place truly exists, and that somehow I'm here. It's real. Matteo's voice comes from behind me, and I turn to find him standing in the bedroom doorway with 2 steaming cups in his hands. He's dressed more casually than I've seen, beige linen pants and white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and there's something different about him here in Italy, something more relaxed and genuine. And it's yours, for as long as you want. He approaches and hands me one of the cups, and when I drink I discover it's strong, perfect espresso, exactly the way I never knew I liked it until now. The first week in Italy passes like a dream I don't want to wake from. Matteo shows me the country with a passion that transforms each place into something magical, and I realize he's not just a tour guide taking me to famous spots. He's someone sharing pieces of his soul through streets he knows by heart. Florence welcomes us with its imposing cathedrals and galleries full of old masters' works. We walk for hours through the Uffizi, and Matteo tells me stories about each painting as if he'd personally known the artists who created them centuries ago. He notices the way my eyes linger on certain works, the way my fingers itch imagining holding a brush again. But he says nothing, just watches with those dark eyes that seem to see everything. Rome leaves us dizzy with its historical grandeur and its ruins that tell thousands of years of stories. We throw coins in the Trevi fountain at sunset, and Matteo tells me the legend says this guarantees our return to the Eternal City. We eat gelato sitting on the Spanish Steps while tourists rush past around us, And for the first time in years, I feel invisible in the best possible way. Just another person enjoying life without the weight of expectations. Venice is the last stop, and it's my favorite. The canals reflect the old buildings in ways that seem like pure magic, and Matteo insists on a gondola ride even though I protest it's too cliché. We float through the narrow canals while the gondolier sings in Italian, and Matteo translates quietly in my ear, his warm breath against my skin, creating shivers that have nothing to do with the cool air from the water. But it's not just the famous places that make the week special. It's the food served in small, hidden trattorias, where Matteo is welcomed like family. Dishes of fresh pasta and sauces that dance on the tongue. Crusty breads dipped in golden green olive oil that comes from the villa's own groves. It's the living culture that pulses on every corner. The art that's not just in museums, but on the streets, in people's expressive gestures, in the music that seems to come from everywhere. And through all of this, Matteo is different from the intense, dangerous man who invaded my bridal suite. Here, he's gentle in a way that disarms all my defenses, attentive without being suffocating like Pierce always was. He doesn't demand anything from me, doesn't control what I wear, or how I style my hair, or who I talk to. He's just present, a constant, solid presence that makes me feel safe and free at the same time. The chemistry between us grows with each passing day, a delicious and torturous tension that manifests in looks that last too long, in accidental touches that don't seem accidental, in small smiles that carry unspoken promises. Our dinners at the villa extend for hours, conversations flowing as easily as the red wine Matteo pours from bottles that come from the surrounding vineyards. It's during one of these dinners, under the stars on the villa's terrace, that Matteo finally tells me about his family for real. I inherited the business when I was 23, he says, swirling the wine in his glass while looking at the dark liquid. My father was killed in a territorial dispute. Old Mafia stuff he swore he'd left behind, but that ended up catching up with him anyway. I'm sorry, I say quietly, and it's genuine. I was too young, too scared, but I had no choice, he continues. And there's a vulnerability in his voice I've never heard before. I took over everything, the legitimate and illegal businesses, and spent the last 14 years cleaning the Salvatore name, transforming a crime empire into a real business empire. Did you succeed? I ask. Almost, he responds with a humorless smile. There are still ghosts from the past that show up sometimes, but nothing I can't control. I tell him about my own forgotten dreams, about how I loved to paint when I was younger, how I spent hours mixing colors and creating worlds on canvases. I tell him how Pierce made a point of making it clear that art wasn't a serious career, that a CEO's wife had more important obligations than futile hobbies, and how I'd put away my brushes and never touch them again. Painting is freedom in its purest form, Matteo says when I finish, and there's an intensity in his eyes. It's creating something from nothing. It's expressing what words can't. It's owning your own world. 2 days later, he takes me to a part of the villa I hadn't explored yet. He opens the double doors of old wood, and when I enter the room, my breath catches in my throat. It's a complete art studio, with huge windows that let natural light flood the space, canvases of all sizes organized against a wall, solid wood easels positioned at perfect angles, and a long table covered with paints, brushes, palettes, everything an artist could need and more. Paint, Matteo says simply, leaning against the doorframe with that small smile I'm learning, means he's proud of himself. Whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. No one will judge you. No one will tell you it's a waste of time. No one will control you. Tears run down my face without permission. And for the first time since I arrived here, they're not tears of fear or confusion. They're of pure gratitude. Thank you, I manage to whisper, and he just nods, understanding without needing me to explain. It's the first time in my life that someone truly supports my dreams instead of trying to mold them into something more convenient, more acceptable, more profitable. And I realize I'm starting to feel something for Matteo that goes far beyond physical attraction, something deeper and scarier and more exciting. But the perfect bubble we've built in Tuscany can't last forever. A week after my arrival, I'm in the studio painting for the first time in years when my phone rings. It's Sophie, and when I answer, I can hear the panic in her voice before she even starts speaking. Celine, Pierce is furious. She practically screams into the phone, words coming out so fast I can barely keep up. He hired private investigators, the best money can buy, and they discovered everything. My stomach plummets. Discovered what? That it was Matteo Salvatore who took you, that you're in Italy with him. Everything Celine. He knows everything. Sophie takes a deep breath trying to calm down. And he's coming after you. He said you're still legally his fiancé, that there are contracts. that he'll bring you back even if he has to use force. The brush falls from my hand, staining the floor with blue paint. Sophie, I can't go back. I can't. I know, I'm just warning you, she says more gently now. He's traveling to Italy today, Celine, with an army of lawyers. He's determined to get you. When I hang up, my hands are trembling. I find Matteo in his office reviewing papers, and when I enter, he immediately notices something's wrong from my face. Pierce knows where I am, I say without preamble. He hired investigators, found out about you, about Italy, about everything, and he's coming to get me. I expect panic. I expect anger. I expect any strong reaction. But Matteo just leans back in the leather chair, that irritating calmness returning to his face. Let him come, he says, with a simplicity that borders on disdain. He doesn't scare me. Matteo, you don't understand. Pierce doesn't give up when he wants something. I start to protest. Neither do I, he interrupts me, standing up and coming to me. His hands take my face gently. You chose to be here, chose freedom, chose me. Pierce can come with as many lawyers as he wants. It doesn't change anything. I want to believe him, want to feel this confidence he demonstrates so easily. But I know Pierce. I know his cold determination when he wants something, and I know this is far from over. 3 days later, Pierce Lancaster arrives in Tuscany. He doesn't come alone. There are black cars filling the road leading to the villa, and when I look out the window, I see men in suits getting out of the vehicles, some clearly lawyers carrying leather briefcases, others looking more like private security than legal advisors. And in the middle of them all, Pierce gets out of the main car, impeccable gray suit even after the long trip. Hair perfectly styled, face a mask of cold determination. He looks at the villa with that expression I know well, the one he uses when he's about to close a difficult deal, and I know that in his head that's exactly what I am. A deal to be recovered, a runaway property, possession that needs to be reclaimed. She's my fiancé, I hear Pierce say loudly to Enzo, who's blocking the villa entrance, and I came to take her back. Chapter 4, Clash of Titans.
She said no. This doesn't concern you.
Pierce doesn't wait to be invited in. He crosses through the villa's gate with the confidence of someone who believes he has legal right over everything he sees. And when Enzo tries to block him at the entrance, one of the lawyers hands over papers that apparently grant official permission from local authorities for this invasion. I'm standing in the main hallway when Pierce enters, and for the first time in a week, I feel that familiar tightness in my chest that I always felt around him. He stops when he sees me, his eyes traveling over my body in a way that makes me want to cover myself, even though I'm dressed in a simple summer dress. Celine, he says my name like it's a reprimand. Enough of this whole insanity. Come back with me now. No, I respond, and the word comes out firmer than I expected. Pierce's face turns red, that vein in his forehead pulsing the way it always pulses when he's losing control. You humiliated me, he practically shouts, all corporate composure disappearing. In front of 300 people, Celine. My mother, my associates, the press that I myself invited. Because I don't love you, I shout back, and it's liberating to finally say those words to his face after 2 years of holding them in. Love is irrelevant, Pierce shoots back with coldness returning to his voice, as if explaining something obvious to a foolish child. We have a signed contract. Families that depend on this agreement. Businesses built on top of this alliance. Love doesn't pay bills, Celine. Doesn't keep companies running. She said no. Matteo's voice cuts through the air like a sharp blade, and I turn to see him descending the main staircase with that dangerous calmness that makes Pierce's lawyers instinctively take a step back. Now get out of my house before I make you leave. Pierce finally looks at Matteo for real, and I see recognition in his eyes, followed by something that looks like triumph. And you must be Matteo Salvatore, he says the name with calculated disdain. Italian Mafia boss in New York, dirty business disguised as legitimate, and now apparently also a bride kidnapper. She came of her own free will, Matteo responds with a voice cold as marble, descending the last step and coming to stand beside me. His proximity makes me breathe easier. Clear manipulation, Pierce points with an accusing finger. Brainwashing, psychological coercion, taking advantage of emotional vulnerability. I have lawyers who will prove each one of these accusations in court. I chose. My voice comes out louder than I intended, echoing off the villa's old walls. For the first time in my entire life, I made a choice that was mine, Pierce. Mine. Not my father's. Not your mother's. Not the lawyers or the business contracts. Mine. Pierce ignores my words like he always ignores everything that doesn't serve his plans. You're going to face lawsuits for this, he says, looking directly at Matteo now. Kidnapping, interference in legal contract, manipulation. I can continue the list if you want. I'm going to destroy you and this front operation you call a business. Try, Matteo responds with that small, dangerous smile that doesn't reach his eyes. But you should know that men more powerful than you have already tried to destroy me and are buried while I'm still standing. I can make you disappear without a trace if you really irritate me. Are you threatening me? Pierce laughs, but the sound is forced. In front of witnesses? Perfect. More evidence for the lawsuit. I take a step forward, physically placing myself between the two men before this escalates into something worse. Pierce, stop this. You never truly loved me. I was just a pretty trophy for you to display, a piece that completed the perfect image you wanted to project. And this? Pierce points at Mateo with obvious contempt. He's a criminal, Celine. Mafia, walking danger. You ran from safety and stability into the arms of a mobster who'll probably use you and discard you when he gets tired. But he sees me, I respond, and I feel tears burning in my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. He truly sees me, Pierce. You never saw anything beyond a pretty face, a perfect wife for social events, a valuable possession to add to your collection. Mateo sees me as a person. The silence that falls is heavy and tense. Pierce looks at me as if seeing me for the first time, and then his expression hardens into something cold and calculated that I recognize well. You're going to regret this, he says with a low, threatening voice. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you'll regret humiliating me like this. And when that happens, don't come running back because the door will be closed. He turns and leaves, the lawyers running after him like ducklings following their mother, and the sound of cars departing fills the silence he leaves behind. When we're finally alone, my legs almost give out, and Mateo holds me by the elbows, guiding me to an armchair. Are you sure? He asks quietly, kneeling in front of me to be at eye level. Sure about me? About all of this? I'm starting to be, I admit honestly, because even with all the chaos, even with Pierce's threats still echoing, I feel more certain of this than I've felt about anything in recent years. Mateo raises his hand and touches my face with a gentleness that completely contrasts with the coldness he showed Pierce just minutes ago. Can I kiss you? He asks. And the question itself is already so different from Pierce that my heart races. Please, I whisper, and then he's pulling me up, bringing me close, and his lips meet mine. The kiss is intense and desperate, loaded with all the tension we've accumulated over the past week, all the looks and touches and almost moments that finally explode into real contact. His hands are in my hair, on my waist, pulling me impossibly closer, and I cling to his shoulders as if it's the only thing keeping me from floating away. I feel everything. Every inch where our bodies touch seems to catch fire. Every movement of his lips against mine sends waves of heat through my entire body, and I realize that never, in 2 years with Pierce, did I feel even a fraction of this. When we finally separate, both breathless, Mateo rests his forehead against mine. This changes everything, he says quietly. I know, I respond, because it's true, and for the first time I'm not afraid of change. But that night, lying in bed alone staring at the ceiling, I can't get Pierce's last words out of my head. He doesn't give up, never gave up on anything he wanted in life, and I know this is far from over. Pierce Lancaster will play dirty, and when he does that, no one comes out unscathed. Chapter 5. Mateo's Past.
I chose you.
And I chose you. 3 days after Pierce's dramatic exit, I wake up to my phone exploding with notifications. When I open social media, my stomach sinks, seeing the headlines dominating all news sites and tabloids. Harper Iris kidnapped by Italian mobster. Runaway bride. Celine Harper held hostage in Italy. CEO Lancaster reports. Matteo Salvatore abducted my fiancé. Each headline is worse than the last, each article painting a picture of me as a helpless victim, and Matteo as a dangerous criminal who dragged me from the altar by force. There are old photos of him clearly chosen to make him look threatening, and photos of me from social events, where I look too innocent and delicate to make my own decisions. Pierce leaked everything to the press, and made a point of controlling the entire narrative. My phone rings, and when I see it's my mother, I answer with trembling hands. Celine, my God, we're seeing the news. Her voice comes out in sobs. This man kidnapped you? Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Mom, it's not like that. I start, but she interrupts me. Pierce said he has proof that this Salvatore is dangerous, that you need help. She continues without letting me explain. We're trying to contact the embassy, the police. We're going to get you out of there, sweetheart. I don't want to be taken out of here. I respond louder than I intended. Mom, I chose to come, chose to stay. Pierce is lying. There's silence on the other end of the line. And then my father takes the phone. Celine Harper, you come home immediately, he orders with that CEO voice that doesn't accept disobedience. I don't know what kind of manipulation this man used on you, but this ends now. We're sending people to get you. I'm 23 years old, Dad. I'm not a child, I protest, feeling tears of frustration burning. And I'm not going back. Not to Pierce, not to that life that was killing me slowly. Are you speaking under duress? My father asks, and I can hear genuine concern mixed with anger. Is he listening to you now? Blink twice if you need help. Dad, for God's sake, no one is coercing me. I shout into the phone. I ran away because I didn't want to marry Pierce, because he never truly loved me, because I was trapped in a golden cage that you helped build. I hang up before he can respond and throw the phone on the bed as if it's burning. The notifications keep coming. Messages from worried uncles, horrified cousins, college friends who barely talk to me but now want to know all the sordid details. I find Mateo in his office, looking at the same flood of headlines on the computer, his jaw clenched in a way that indicates controlled anger. Pierce played well, he admits when he sees me enter. He used the press to transform escape into kidnapping, choice into coercion. My entire family is begging me to come back, I say, feeling my chest tighten with guilt. They think you kidnapped me, that I'm in danger, that I need to be rescued. Mateo stands up and comes to me, his hands taking my face to make me look into his eyes. And you? He asks with a low voice. What do you think, Celine? The question disarms me because he's giving me the out, making it clear that I can leave if I want, that he won't keep me here against my will. The tears I was holding back finally escape, running hot down my cheeks. I don't know anymore, I admit between sobs. My family is destroyed. The press is painting you as a monster, and I'm here not knowing if I did the right thing or if I made the biggest mistake of my life. Mateo wipes my tears with his thumbs and then pulls me to sit on the office's leather couch, sitting beside me but giving me space to breathe. You need to know the complete truth about me, he says, and there's a seriousness in his voice that makes me pay attention. About my family, about what I really do, about the dangers that come with being by my side. I nod, wiping my face with the backs of my hands, and he begins to tell. I was born into the Mafia, literally. My grandfather built the Salvatore Empire through methods that today would be called cruel. My father inherited it and tried to modernize, but never managed to completely get rid of the past. Mateo speaks, looking at his own hands. When he died, and I took over at 23, I was determined to do it differently, to transform everything into truly legitimate businesses. Did you succeed? I ask quietly. I've been trying for 14 years, he responds with a humorless smile. I managed to transform 90% of the operation into legal, real import and export, wineries, olive groves, properties, but there's still 10% of the past that won't let go. People who owe favors that are collected in ways the law wouldn't approve. Are you still involved with crime? I need to ask. I need to know the complete truth. Not actively, but the Salvatore name carries weight in the underworld, and sometimes that weight is used in ways I don't completely control, he admits with brutal honesty. I am dangerous, Celine. I won't lie about that. I have enemies. I have a dirty past. I have connections that would put you at risk just by being by my side. He finally looks at me again, and there's vulnerability in his dark eyes I've never seen before. But never to you. I swear on my life I would never be dangerous to you. I would protect you with everything I have, until my last breath. The silence that falls between us is heavy with unspoken truths and decisions that need to be made. Mateo gets up as if to leave, as if giving me space to process. But before he reaches the door, I speak. Why me? I ask, and he stops halfway. Of all the women you could have chosen, why did you fixate on me? Mateo turns, and when he speaks, there's a raw emotion in his voice that makes my heart tighten. Because you're the first good thing I chose for myself, he says simply. Not for power, not for business, not for obligation or family duty. I chose you for love, even knowing it was insanity, even knowing I could lose you. My breath catches. You love me? Desperately, he admits, and there's a vulnerability in the confession that makes him seem more human than ever. Since that day at the gallery, when I saw you laugh, when the light caught in your hair, and you looked like the most beautiful and genuine thing in a room full of fakeness. He pauses, and I see the internal struggle reflected on his face. But I understand if you want to go. Go back to your family, to your life. I won't keep you here. I would never do that. I get up from the couch and go to him, and when I'm close enough to touch, I place my hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating strong and fast under his shirt. I'm staying, I say, with certainty I haven't felt in days. Not because you're holding me, not because I'm afraid to go, but because I want to stay. Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want, not what's expected of me. The relief that crosses Mateo's face is visible, and then he's pulling me close, kissing me with an intensity that makes my knees weak. This kiss is different from the first. It's deeper, more desperate, loaded with promises and fears and hopes that neither of us knows how to verbalize. His hands go to my waist, pulling me impossibly closer, and I wrap my arms around his neck, fingers burying in his dark hair. When we separate, both breathless, there's an unspoken question in his eyes. I'm sure, I whisper before he can ask, and it's all he needs to hear. Mateo picks me up with an ease that makes my stomach flip. and carries me upstairs to his bedroom, a space I've never entered before. The room is large and masculine, dark tones of wood and heavy fabrics, but there's a softness in the way the afternoon light enters through the windows. He puts me down gently beside the bed, and his hands go to my face, holding like I'm something precious and fragile. "Are you sure?" he asks again, giving me every opportunity to back out. "I am," I respond, and this time there's no hesitation, no doubt, only pure certainty. What happens next is gentle and perfect in a way I've never experienced before. It's not obligation like it always was with Pierce in the few intimate moments we shared. It's not performance or duty or something to be checked off a list. It's my choice, my desire, my pleasure, and for the first time I understand the difference between doing something because it's expected and doing it because you truly want to. Mateo is gentle and patient, attentive to every reaction, every sigh, every touch that makes me shiver. He asks if I'm okay, if I like this or that, gives me control when I need it, and takes control when I ask. It's a perfect dance between giving and receiving. And when we finally lie together afterward, my body intertwined with his, I feel a completeness I never knew was missing. "Stay with me," Mateo whispers in my hair, arms keeping me safe against his chest. "Always," I respond, and in that moment, I believe it with every fiber of my being. But this bubble of perfection can't last forever. The next day, my phone rings too early, and when I answer, it's my mother again. But this time her voice isn't tearful, it's scared. "Celine, Pierce called your father," she says quickly. "He said if you don't come back in 48 hours, he's going to destroy Harper Company. He has proof of fraud your father committed years ago. He can send him to prison." My blood freezes. "He's bluffing." "Your father doesn't think he is," she responds, and I hear real panic in her voice. "Celine, Pierce has power, has contacts. He can really do this. You need to come back, at least to negotiate for the family's sake." When I hang up, Mateo is awake watching me. "Pierce played his last card," I say with a hollow voice. "He's threatening my family, and I see in his eyes that we both know this changes everything." Chapter 6, The Final Threat.
I came for you.
2 hours after my mother's call, my phone rings again. This time it's Pierce directly, and when I answer I feel my stomach turn just hearing his voice. "Celine," he says with that cold calmness he always used in difficult negotiations. "I hope you've thought carefully about your situation." "What do you want, Pierce?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady even with my hands trembling. "You know exactly what I want. Come back to New York now, or your family suffers the consequences." He responds bluntly, not even trying to disguise the threat. "I have enough power, enough contacts, enough evidence to completely destroy Harper Company and send your father to prison for tax fraud." "You're bluffing," I say, but my voice wavers on the last word. Pierce laughs, and the sound is so cold it makes me shiver. "Want to bet on that? I have documents proving your father embezzled funds 5 years ago, fraudulent contracts, false declarations to the IRS. I can hand everything over to the authorities today if you want to test my determination." My breath catches in my throat. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you publicly humiliated me, because you destroyed my reputation, and because I need you to understand that no one walks away from a deal with me without paying the price." He responds with brutal honesty. "So here's your choice, Celine. Very simple. You come back and fix this whole mess, or your family loses absolutely everything. You have 48 hours to decide." He hangs up before I can respond, and the phone falls from my hand, hitting the wooden floor with a sound that seems too final. Mateo finds me sitting on the bedroom floor, tears silently running down my face, and immediately kneels beside me. "What happened?" he asks, hands taking my face to make me look at him. "Pierce called," I managed to say between sobs. "He has proof of fraud against my father. He can send him to prison. He can destroy my entire family. And he said he'll only not do it if I come back. He's bluffing," Mateo says immediately, but I see doubt in his eyes. "What if he's not?" I ask, grabbing his hands desperately. "Mateo, it's my mother, my father, people who don't deserve to pay for my mistake of running away, for my selfishness of choosing happiness instead of duty. It's not selfish to choose your own life," he responds firmly, wiping my tears with his thumbs. "And do you deserve prison again? Deserve to go back to a life that was suffocating you just because Pierce is playing dirty? It's an impossible dilemma, a choice I shouldn't have to make. On one side is my freedom, my happiness, Mateo, and this new life I was starting to build. On the other is my family, people who love me even if they don't understand my choices, people who could lose everything because of my decisions. I need to know if it's true," I say finally, getting up from the floor on shaky legs. "I need to know if Pierce really has what he says he has." Mateo pulls out his phone and calls Enzo, putting it on speaker. "I need you to investigate Pierce Lancaster. See if he really has evidence of fraud against the Harper family or if he's just bluffing." "Already on it, boss," Enzo responds, and I can hear the sound of fingers typing fast on a keyboard. I'll have answers in a few hours. Those hours are the longest of my life. I sit in the studio looking at blank canvases, unable to paint, unable to do anything except imagine my father being led away in handcuffs, my mother losing the house where she lived for 30 years, my family destroyed because of my selfish choices. Mateo doesn't leave me alone for a minute. He sits beside me in silence, not trying to convince me of anything, not pressuring, just present in the way he's always been since I got here. And that's what makes everything harder, knowing I'm going to have to leave him. When Enzo finally calls back, it's already getting dark outside. "Boss, I found everything," he says, and the tone of voice already tells me it's not good news. Pierce really does have documents proving tax fraud by Harper Company, falsified contracts, embezzlement. He must have hired the best private investigators money can buy. My world crumbles with those words. It's not a bluff. It's real. Pierce really can destroy my family if I don't come back. There's more, Enzo continues reluctantly. He's already contacted lawyers, already prepared the lawsuits. He's just waiting for the deadline he gave Celine to expire. If she doesn't come back in 48 hours, he'll file everything tomorrow morning. When the call ends, I look at Mateo and see he already knows what I'm going to say. "I need to go back," I say, and my voice comes out broken. "I need to save my family. I have no choice." "No," Mateo responds firmly, standing up and coming to me. "I won't let you go back to him. Not after everything. Not after seeing you finally free." "It's not your choice, Mateo," I say, and the tears start falling again. "It's mine. And I'm choosing my family. They didn't ask to be in the middle of this. They don't deserve to pay for my mistakes. You going back to Pierce would be the mistake," he insists, hands on my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "He's going to trap you again. He's going to control you again. And this time it'll be worse, because now you know the taste of freedom." "I know," I whisper, and my heart is breaking into pieces inside my chest. "But I can't let my father go to prison. I can't let my mother lose everything. They're my parents, Mateo. As much as they pressured me, as much as they didn't understand, they love me in their own way." Mateo releases my shoulders and runs his hands through his hair, clearly desperate. "Then I'll go with you," he says finally. "I'll come back to New York with you, protect you, stay by your side." "No," I respond immediately, shaking my head. "Pierce will kill you, or you'll kill him, and either way this ends in tragedy. I can't let that happen." "Then what?" he practically shouts, and it's the first time I've seen him lose his composure. "I just let you go? Let you go back to a man who sees you as property? Stay here watching while you throw away everything we've built? I'll handle this alone," I say, with more firmness than I feel. "I'll go back, negotiate with Pierce, save my family, and find a way to leave again. But you can't be there. It would be too dangerous." Mateo looks at me for a long moment, and I see raw pain in his dark eyes. "You're really going to do this," he says, and it's not a question. It's a defeated observation. "I have to," I respond, and then I move closer and kiss him one last time, putting everything I can't say in words into this contact. When we separate, we both have tears on our faces. The next morning, I'm at the private airport with a small suitcase, waiting for the jet that will take me back to New York. Mateo is with me, but keeps his distance, as if touching would make everything harder. "When you realize you've been deceived, when you need me, call," he says, when they announce it's time to board. "No matter what happens, I'll be waiting." "I know," I say, and then force my legs to move toward the plane. I look back one last time and see Mateo standing there, Enzo beside him with his hand on his boss's shoulder in a gesture of comfort. The image of the two of them getting smaller and smaller as the plane pulls away is the last thing I see before tears completely blur my vision. "Boss," I hear Enzo say quietly as the plane disappears into the sky. "I lost her," Mateo responds, and his voice is broken in a way I've never heard before. "I lost everything." And as the plane takes me back to New York, back to Pierce, back to the prison I escaped from, all I can think is that I made the biggest mistake of my life, but it was the only mistake I could live with myself after making. Chapter 7. The Tables Turn.
You've got this, Mateo.
New York Airport welcomes me with gray skies and heavy air that brutally contrasts with the bright blue of Tuscany I left behind. When I exit the private terminal, Pierce is waiting beside a gleaming black car, impeccable suit as always, and there's a triumphant smile on his lips that makes me feel sick. "I knew you'd come back," he says when I approach, and there's no warmth in the words, only cold satisfaction of someone who won a bet. In the end, they always make the right choice when they understand the consequences of disobeying. I ignore the comment and get in the car without waiting for him to open the door for me. Pierce enters from the other side, and the driver closes the doors before starting to drive toward downtown Manhattan. The silence inside the vehicle is heavy and suffocating, and with each passing second I feel my chest tighten more. "I'm coming back," I say finally, breaking the silence but keeping my eyes fixed on the window instead of looking at him. "I'll marry you, do everything they expected me to do, but you leave my family alone." Destroy the evidence. Forget the fraud. Let my father continue living his life without threats. Deal. Pierce responds too quickly, and I should have noticed at that moment that something was wrong with how easily he agreed. He makes a calculated pause before asking, "And Salvatore?" The mention of Matteo's name makes my heart squeeze painfully, but I force my voice to come out steady when I respond. It's over. It was temporary insanity, a moment of weakness. It doesn't mean anything now. The words burn on my tongue like the lies they are, but Pierce seems satisfied with the answer. He leans back in the leather seat with that air of superiority he's always had, as if he'd just closed the deal of the century. The following days pass in preparation for a rushed wedding that Pierce insists on making happen as quickly as possible, as if afraid I'll change my mind if I have too much time to think. He schedules the ceremony for 10 days after my return, something small and private this time, without the pomp of the previous wedding, just close family and necessary witnesses. I'm in the apartment Pierce rented for me, looking without seeing at the simple white dress hanging in the closet, when Sophie appears without warning. She enters like a red-haired hurricane of determination, closes the door behind her forcefully, and stares at me with eyes that shine with contained rage. "We need to talk," she says without preamble, throwing a folder of documents on the bed beside me. "Now." "Sophie, I'm not in the headspace to—" I start, but she interrupts me. "He lied, Celine," she says, and the words come out so loaded with fury they make me truly pay attention. Pierce lied about absolutely everything. My heart stops for a second. "What are you talking about?" Sophie grabs the folder and starts pulling out papers, spreading them on the bed between us. "I hired a private investigator, spent all my savings on this because something wasn't making sense," she explains quickly, fingers pointing to specific documents. "And look what I discovered. The setup didn't exist, Celine. It never existed." I pick up one of the papers with trembling hands and see their printed emails, conversations between Pierce and a lawyer, discussing how to create fake documents that looked like evidence of fraud. "This can't be real," I whisper, but the words printed in front of me are too clear to deny. "It's real," Sophie confirms, grabbing another document. "He forged everything, Celine. The fraudulent contracts, the false tax declarations, absolutely everything was created by him just to scare you and make you come back. Your father never committed any fraud. Your family was always safe." "He lied?" I ask, and my voice comes out so low I barely recognize it. "He made it all up." "Completely," Sophie responds, and I see tears in her eyes now. Tears of rage for me. "Your family is safe. Always was. Pierce just wanted you back at any cost. Didn't matter if he had to lie, manipulate, or destroy your happiness in the process." The rage that explodes inside me is so intense that for a moment I can't even breathe. I left Matteo, left Italy, left my freedom and happiness for a lie. I came back to this prison, agreed to marry a man I don't love, all for threats that were never real. "Where is he?" I ask, getting up from the bed so fast the papers fly around the room. "Celine, wait. You need to think before—" Sophie tries, but I'm already going out the door. I find Pierce in his office at Lancaster Corp, sitting behind the huge mahogany desk reviewing contracts, as if he hadn't just destroyed my life with lies. He looks up when I enter without knocking, and has the audacity to smile as if my presence were an expected gift. "Celine, what a pleasant surprise. I was just—" he starts, but I don't let him finish. "You lied," I shout, and my voice echoes off the luxurious office walls. "About everything, about the evidence, about the fraud. You made it all up." Pierce's smile disappears, replaced by that cold, calculated expression I know so well. "So you found out," he says with irritating tranquility, as if we were discussing the weather. "Faster than I expected, but it doesn't matter. You're already back." "It doesn't matter?" I repeat, incredulous at his coldness. "You destroyed my life with lies, made me abandon everything for false threats, and you think it doesn't matter?" Pierce gets up and walks around the desk, coming to stand too close to me. "I needed you back, Celine. You publicly humiliated me, destroyed my reputation, made me look weak in front of important people," he lists as if cataloging crimes I committed. "I needed to restore my image, and having you back was the only way to do that." "Your reputation?" I almost shout from so much anger. "You used my family, manipulated me, blatantly lied, all for your damn reputation? And it worked." Pierce responds with that arrogant smile returning. "You're here. You're coming back to me. We're getting married in a week, and everything goes back to normal. My reputation will be restored. Business will get back on track, and you'll learn to behave like the wife you should have been from the beginning." His words are the final straw. "I came," I say with a low voice, but loaded with determination. "But I'm not staying." I turn to leave, but Pierce grabs my arm with force that hurts, fingers squeezing until they leave marks. "You're not leaving here," he hisses too close to my face, and for the first time I see something dangerous in his eyes, something that goes beyond control and enters territory of sick obsession. You're mine. You signed a contract with my family. You owe me this alliance, and you'll comply no matter what I have to do to force you. Let me go, I shout, trying to pull my arm, but he only squeezes harder. And then the office door literally explodes inward, the expensive wood shattering with the force of the kick, and Matteo enters like a hurricane of contained fury, Enzo right behind him with an equally dangerous expression. Let her go, Matteo orders, and his voice is so cold and threatening that even Pierce hesitates. Now, Pierce releases me but doesn't back down, and to my surprise and horror, he pulls a gun from the holster hidden under his suit. You shouldn't have come, Pierce says, pointing the gun directly at Matteo, and his hand is trembling with barely contained rage. This is between me and my fiancé. It's none of your business. Everything happens too fast to fully process. Matteo moves with speed that shouldn't be possible, closing the distance between them in 2 long steps, and his hand grabs Pierce's wrist, forcing the gun upward while the other fist hits his face with brutal force. Pierce falls to the floor with a cry of pain, his nose bleeding, and the gun slides across the wooden floor until it stops at Enzo's feet, who quickly picks it up. Celine, come here, Matteo says, extending his hand to me without taking his eyes off Pierce fallen on the floor, and I run to him, letting him pull me behind his body protectively. Pierce tries to get up, but Enzo puts his foot on his back, keeping him on the floor. Stay still, Enzo advises with a calm but threatening voice. You won't want me to use your own methods against you. That's when I hear the sirens outside, getting louder and louder until they stop in front of the building. Matteo must have called the police before breaking in, must have planned everything in advance like he always does. Police officers enter the office seconds later, guns drawn until they realize the situation is under control. A detective who seems to be in command approaches Pierce still on the floor and starts reading him his rights. Pierce Lancaster, you're under arrest for fraud, document forgery, threats, attempted assault with a weapon, manipulation and coercion, the detective lists, while another officer handcuffs Pierce and lifts him from the floor. You have the right to remain silent. This is ridiculous, Pierce shouts, fighting against the handcuffs. She's my fiancé. I have the right to. You have no rights over me, I interrupt, and my voice comes out strong and clear. You never had, you never will. It's over, Pierce. They take him out, still shouting threats and protests that get more distant until they disappear completely. When the office finally empties, leaving only me, Matteo, and Enzo, my legs give out, and I would fall to the floor if Matteo didn't catch me. Are you okay? He asks, hands checking my face, my arms, looking for injuries. I can't answer with words. I can only cry as I throw myself into his arms, clutching his shirt tightly as if he'll disappear if I let go. Matteo holds me firmly, one hand on my back and the other in my hair, letting me cry out everything I held in over the past days. You came, I managed to say between sobs. Even after I left, you came to get me. I always come, Matteo responds, voice hoarse with emotion. For you, always. No matter how many times I have to, no matter what's in the way, I'll always come get you. Enzo discreetly leaves the office, giving us privacy, and I stay there in Matteo's arms, feeling for the first time in days that I can truly breathe again. How did you find out? I ask finally, pulling away just enough to look at his face. Enzo investigated as soon as you left, Matteo explains, wiping my tears with his thumbs. We discovered everything was a lie, that Pierce forged the evidence. We gathered real evidence against him, contacted the authorities, and came to get you. I'm sorry, I say, and the words seem so inadequate, for leaving, for not trusting that you'd find a solution, for— No, he interrupts me gently. You did what you thought was right to protect your family, and I love you more for it, not less. Never apologize for having too big a heart. And when he kisses me there in the middle of the destroyed office, surrounded by evidence of Pierce's madness and the salvation Matteo brought, I finally understand what it means to be truly free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from men who see women as property, but mainly free to choose the man who chose me back. Chapter 8. Freedom and Choice. Just love.
Just love.
The golden afternoon light of Tuscany enters through the studio's huge windows, illuminating the canvases scattered across the walls in different stages of completion. I'm standing in front of the easel, working on a painting of the vineyards that stretch to the most beautiful horizon in the world. 6 months have passed since Pierce was arrested, 6 months since I returned to Italy with Matteo, and finally allowed this life to become real and permanent. My father's fingers never stepped into a prison cell because the accusations were all false from the beginning, and my family eventually understood that my escape wasn't kidnapping, it was salvation. I hear soft footsteps behind me, and a smile appears on my lips before I even turn around. Matteo enters the studio with that quiet way he has, leaning against the doorframe just watching while I work. He does this often, appears without warning just to see me paint, and always says I'm most beautiful when I'm lost in art. It's beautiful, he says after a few minutes of comfortable silence. and I can hear the genuine smile in his voice. It's Tuscany, I respond without taking my eyes off the canvas, adding one more touch of golden light to the painted grapes. Easy to paint beauty when you're surrounded by it all the time. I wasn't talking about the painting, Matteo says, and now he's closer, his voice coming from right behind me. He makes a pause loaded with meaning. I was talking about you. I finally turn to face him, and I can't hold back the smile that takes over my face. Cheesy, I say accusingly without real criticism, and he laughs in that low way that always makes my stomach flip. Truth, he corrects, approaching until he's close enough to touch. His hands find my waist, paint-stained fingers and all, and pull me gently closer. Can I ask you something? Always, I respond, because it's true. Because in these 6 months, we've built such a solid foundation of trust that I can't imagine denying him anything. Matteo takes a deep breath, and then to my surprise, he kneels right there on the paint-stained studio floor, looking up with those dark eyes full of emotion he rarely lets show so openly. "Will you marry me?" he asks, and his voice comes out hoarse but firm. My breath catches in my throat, and for a moment I can only stand there looking at him with my eyes getting wet. "Matteo," I manage to whisper, bringing my hands to my face to cover my mouth in shock. He takes a small dark blue velvet box from his pocket and opens it, revealing a simple but beautiful ring, an emerald surrounded by small diamonds that catch the afternoon sunlight. "Not because I have to do this," he continues, and there's a vulnerability in his voice that makes me love him even more. "Not for a contract, not for family, not because it's expected or appropriate." He pauses, his eyes never leaving mine. "But because I want to, because I love you more than I thought it possible to love someone, and because I truly hope you want to as well." The tears finally escape, running hot down my cheeks, but they're tears of pure happiness. "You gave me everything," I say between sobs, kneeling too to be at his level. "Freedom when I was trapped, choice when everything was decided by others, love when I thought I'd never be truly loved." "So?" Matteo asks, and I can see he's nervous despite the confidence he shows. I can see hope and fear mixed in his eyes. "Will you marry me, Celine?" I wipe the tears with the back of my hand, leaving paint stains on my face, but I don't care. "On one condition," I say finally, and I see his expression become cautious. "Anyone," he responds immediately, and I know he's serious. "No rigid timeline, no absurd rules, no control over every detail," I list, thinking of everything Pierce tried to do, and that Matteo never did. Just love, just the two of us building a life together where we both have a voice and choice. The smile that takes over Matteo's face is radiant and relieved. "Just love," he repeats like a vow. "I promise, Celine. Just love, respect, partnership." "So, yes," I respond, and the word comes out strong and clear and full of certainty. 1,000 times yes, Matteo. I'll marry you. He takes the ring from the box and slides it onto my finger with hands that tremble slightly with emotion. And when the ring fits perfectly, I know this is the right choice, the only choice that should always have been mine from the beginning. Matteo pulls me into a kiss that's sweet and deep and full of promises of the future, and when we separate, we're both laughing and crying at the same time, sitting on the studio floor surrounded by art and golden light and pure love. A year later, the garden of Villa Salvatore is transformed into something out of a dream, but in a simple and intimate way that reflects exactly who we are. There are no 300 guests this time, no press or elaborate orchestra or decoration that cost a fortune. There are only the people who truly matter, seated in rustic wooden chairs decorated with wildflowers from the property itself. My family is in the front row, and seeing my mother crying with happiness this time instead of social anxiety makes my heart squeeze with gratitude. My father still doesn't completely understand why I chose Matteo instead of Pierce, but he's here, and that's what matters. They finally accepted that my happiness is worth more than business alliances. Sophie is beside me as my maid of honor, beautiful in a light blue dress she chose herself without my interference. And on the other side of the small aisle of petals, I see Enzo standing beside Matteo as best man, the two men talking quietly while waiting for the music to start. When the simple violin music finally plays, everyone stands up, but my eyes go straight to Matteo. He's under an arch of wildflowers and olive branches, wearing a light gray suit that perfectly matches the rustic setting, and when our eyes meet, I see tears in his that mirror mine. I walk down the aisle alone this time, because this choice is mine, and I don't need anyone giving me away like property. Each step I take toward Matteo is a step I choose to take, and when I finally reach the improvised altar, he extends his hands, and I take them without hesitation. The ceremony is short and simple. conducted by a local judge Mateo has known for years. And when it's time for vows, my heart beats so hard I'm sure everyone can hear it. I take a deep breath and look directly into Mateo's eyes when I begin to speak. "You offered me escape when I was trapped," I say, and my voice comes out firmer than I expected. "But you gave me much more than that. You gave me a real home, a place where I can be myself, love that doesn't demand I change or mold myself into something I'm not." I squeeze his hands. "I promise to never forget that I chose you, Mateo. And I choose you again today, and I'll choose you every day for the rest of my life." I see tears running openly down his face now, and when it's his turn to speak, his voice comes out hoarse with emotion. "You were another man's fiancé," he begins, and there's a small smile on his lips. "And I stole you on your wedding day, invaded your life, offered you madness when I should have offered sensibility." He wipes a tear running down my cheek. "It was the best theft of my entire life, and I promise to spend every day I have left deserving the choice you made, deserving your love, deserving you." The judge declares us husband and wife, and Mateo pulls me into a kiss that's witnessed by everyone we love, a kiss that seals not a business contract, but a commitment of true love. The party afterward is cheerful and relaxed, with simple but delicious food prepared by local cooks, wine from the villa's own vineyards, and music that invites everyone to dance under the stars that begin to appear in the Tuscan sky. When the night is already late and guests start to leave, Mateo takes my hand and leads me away from the party, walking through the garden until we reach a high point from where we can see the entire property, illuminated by soft lights and stars shining bright in the sky without light pollution. We stand there in comfortable silence for a few minutes, my head resting on his shoulder and his arm around my waist, just appreciating the peace and beauty of the moment. "Do you regret it?" I ask suddenly, breaking the silence. "Stealing me that day, risking everything, all the madness that came after." Mateo turns to face me, one hand going to my face with that gentleness that's only his. "Stealing you?" he repeats thoughtfully. "Never, not for a second. Almost losing you to Pierce and his lies, always. That will haunt me for the rest of my life. But you didn't lose me," I say, turning completely to face him, hands going up to his neck. "No," he agrees, pulling me impossibly closer. "And I never will." He leans in and kisses me slowly, a kiss that's both promise and celebration. When we separate, he rests his forehead against mine. "My runaway bride." I smile against his lips. "Your chosen wife," I correct gently. "Better," Mateo says, and I can hear the smile in his voice. "Much better." And standing there under the Tuscan stars, in the arms of the man who offered me freedom and gave me love, I know with absolute certainty that this is exactly the life I should be living. Not the life that was planned for me, not the life that would be easier or safer or more appropriate, but the life I chose. And there's nothing better than that.